Excited today to have Will Clayton, who is Senior Vice President of Digital Products at Wiland. Will is a marketing evangelist with expertise across product leadership, privacy strategy, and marketing technology. He's going to explain where we've come from in terms of addressable television, how to credibly relate addressable TV to other marketing activities, and what opportunities exist during lockdown and beyond. So welcome, Will. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Ginger. Let's see, I think I'm going to share. Yes, there we go. All right, are you able to see my deck now?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you so much. Well, I appreciate that intro, and I appreciate everyone. I think it's 5 o'clock there, so I hope that you're able to recharge in the evening when you'd probably rather be out doing something, but wouldn't we all? So thank you all for coming, and I hope that I've got some interesting things for you today, and I am very pleased to address you. So, as Ginger mentioned, make sure my tech is going here. I am Will Clayton, and I head up digital product management at Wiland. Many of you know Wiland. Hopefully have a productive relationship with us. So this is where I come from, and I try to roll through this slide. I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about addressable television. I graduated from Brigham Young University in education and physics. I was going to be a teacher, and that didn't work out. But this whole internet thing came along. So I ended up at North Carolina State in business school, studying marketing and product innovation. And then lots of these other companies here, I have spent my career in ad tech. So I'm very excited about the use of technology to help marketers and to help consumers connect with brands that help them to live fuller and happier lives. Down in the lower left corner there, I'm currently at Wiland, as I mentioned. And then the other thing that I'm deeply passionate about is consumer privacy. And as we push forward with different marketing technology, it's important to remember that we're here to serve people. And so I am a proud and longtime member of the International Association of Privacy Professionals, where I hold a few certifications and try to make sure that when we use data to empower marketers, that we do it in ways that also protect consumers, and that we can wear that white hat at all times. So we're going to talk a little bit about addressable television. How did we get here? I find it fascinating. Hopefully you will too. We're going to talk about the terminology underlying all of this. I want to make sure that you can stand at the water cooler when such things are happening again and speak with confidence and with credibility. We're going to talk a very little bit about how addressable campaigns are implemented and about strategy. We talked about, this is a crazy time. And we'll wrap up by talking about the considerations and opportunities during COVID-19 and beyond. What can we do with all of this? As Ginger mentioned, if you do have questions, go ahead and post those through chat, and there will be an opportunity when we're done. Apologize, we can't take time to address those in real time here. So, addressable television, what the heck is that? Put very simply, it's saying two viewers, neighbors, we can see their houses there in the middle, and they're watching the same content on large screen devices. But through the use of data and the use of technology, we're going to serve one ad to neighbor A, but on the other side of the fence, we've got a neighbor who's a little more health conscious. We know that because of the data, and they're going to get inside of the exact same content on the exact same channel and time, a completely different advertisement. And that fundamentally is what we're doing, is we're going to take a broadcast medium like television, like video, and we're going to turn that into direct marketing media. So let's talk about how we're able to do that. The question we want to talk about, history-wise, how did a mass media like television come to support you, direct marketers? And I've got a timeline here that I'm going to roll through. So before World War II, radio was all the rage, very, very cool stuff, and lots of people through the first half of the 20th century were saying, hey, can we possibly shove pictures in there? And after World War II, folks came home, they had money, they had technology, and we saw television. Television took off. It wasn't very long before we had color television. Lots and lots of money, lots and lots of connection with consumers. But there were some consumers who had a problem. And whoops, hang on. Oh, there we go. I knew I had animation. There were some consumers that had a problem. They lived in valleys, which meant that if the transmitter was on the other side of the mountain, they could buy whatever television set they wanted to, weren't going to be able to pick up that television channel. And so that was where we saw the first commercial cable systems. And what they were was a giant antenna that sat on top of the mountain and ran a cable down the mountain into the valley so that people who lived there could watch television. And because that was a commercial activity, it soon became not only how well can I get you access to the local television channels, but can I bring in other channels? And so this idea of cable television as a way to get reliable access to local broadcasts and then to bring in other broadcasts. So that's where cable originated, but it certainly didn't stop there. In the 1960s and 1970s, that same cable technology, piece of wire with a video signal running through it, allowed promoters to take sporting events, which have a limited number of seats in a limited number of locations, and closed circuit television, send those to movie theaters. And you say, well, movie theaters are not TV, but it was the same technology. And not only is it the same technology, but it was this idea that I have a piece of premium content that people are willing to pay for if I can only get it in front of them. And so some enterprising individuals combined that with the cable system. And in 1972, home box office became the first premium channel. And that's an interesting thing because up until then, everybody who was a part of the cable system, a subscriber, would hook that cable into their television and they'd get all the content that came through the wire. But in 1972, we had premium content, which meant that the cable company had to figure out a way, basically by scrambling part of that signal, but they had to make sure that only people who paid for HBO were able to see HBO. And so this concept, now we've taken the broadcast model, one transmitter, everybody receives the same thing, and we've changed it. And now we've changed it into a multicast model. We've got transmitters with different types of content and different levels of subscription. And that technology led in the 1970s and 1980s to the concept of pay-per-view. So we took the boxing match or the sporting event from the 1960s and 70s and combined that with the home box office model and said, you know what, people are willing to pay $8, $10, $15, $20, $40 to watch this premium event. And in order to support that, in order to find that revenue, the cable companies began to get much, much better at filtering content so that only paying subscribers, households received it. And that's what powered all of this. So in the 1990s, most of the analog systems that were processing all of that went digital. And to compete with the Blockbuster videos of the world and video rental, we saw cable companies offering video on demand because they're now really good at saying, you know what, you paid your money, you're going to get this content. They broaden that to say, not only can you rent or buy a ticket to a sporting event, but you now can also buy a ticket to see a movie, maybe even while it's still in the theaters. So lots and lots of different models that all depended on that cable company's ability to show some content to one household and not to another. And then in the 2000s, that ability was used to split advertisement spots. So you might say, hey, we're going to have a continuous program. It's going to run, but when the commercial airs on the cable company, these households are going to see the Pepsi ad, and these are going to see the smoothie ad. And that was as far as it got. And that's where I jumped into this whole racket and did some very interesting things with trying to figure out which households should see which of those spots. Can we get 3 spots? Can we get more? Do I have to buy them all? Or can we arrange for someone else to come in and buy the households that I don't want? So lots and lots of options. And as that began to grow, there was money in it. There was success for marketers. And we started to see that branch out as well. And then in the last decade, and we've seen high-speed internet connections now and online streaming services. And so I use the word television here, but be aware that that has expanded. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. But there's so many different options that that today there's lots and lots of advanced television, and whether you consider that truly television or some other type of video, it doesn't matter. There's content that people are consuming, and it's possible for us to use data to figure out which ads to serve to different people. So that's how we got here. I'd like to also go through, here's the slide I just talked about, is to say addressable television, this idea that it started from a broadcast, has become addressable video. And because we, you, are direct marketers, there's no need to think about, is it really television or is this some other type of video? We're interested in finding video content that relates to my consumers and talking to them in ways that'll be effective. So lots and lots of different devices. I've represented them here, and who knows what the next, where the next ads will be. I was actually serving video ads to gas pumps almost 20 years ago, and that has become so much more powerful. So let's talk about the terminology. I mentioned that you should be able to speak to this credibly without sounding like an idiot, and that can't. I sat in a conference a few years ago and heard a speaker from a very prominent company out of Redmond, Washington, who used the wrong term in speech and writing throughout his entire pitch and clearly had no idea what he was talking about. So this is the section where you say, hey, these are the words I need, the right buzzwords to know what I'm talking about. So if you hear someone talk about a multiple system operator, or MSO, that is the cable company. And we talked about how they began as antennas on hilltops and wires running down. Well, that was in every valley. And so as those became successful and engaged more subscribers, they get bought. And the multiple system operator is the company that bought them. So when you talk about a cable company, remember, they didn't start out by saying, I'm going to run cable to the entire Northeast and serve content there. They grew to that size by buying little cable companies, one town at a time. And so it's important to remember that those multiple systems aren't always the same. And especially years ago, it's less so today, but you may find that one neighborhood is able to do addressable television because the system that was built there supports it, and another neighborhood just can't. And again, that's changing, but I can't get fiber to my neighborhood because it hasn't got there yet. So sometimes we're limited by the actual geography and the technology that rolls there. So that's our MSO, is a cable company, and you can say that word. That's exactly what it means. And we mentioned there that nowadays those cable companies are very, very interested in providing internet service and anything else they can. A word, set-top box. So the guy that I mentioned referred for a 40-minute presentation to a set-up box, and wrote it in his presentation, and people in the audience started giggling after about the 10th time. So a set-top box is a device that is owned by or delivered and selected by the cable or satellite company, and you use that to get your content. And it usually used to sit on top of your television. That's why it was called the set-top box. I don't know if anybody remembers the weird ones with the cable that you could stretch out to the couch and trip people as they walked by, but there's a picture of a very old school set-top box, and we still see that. You sign up for cable, you get a box. Hopefully your television is too skinny to set it on top of, but that's the box. And here's the bonus term. We talked about what does the MSO do? Well, what they don't want to do is be a dumb pipe. So a dumb pipe is someone whose only job is to sit between content and consumers and feed the one to the other. And so MSOs and telecoms do not want to be dumb pipes. And you can look for different acronyms as they start to say, you know what, that's not our role. Our role is to provide content and engage with consumers. So look to see the cable companies, the telecoms, the MSOs, trying to engage with additional services so that they can avoid being a dumb pipe. So when someone says linear television, they're talking about television that happens whether someone watches it or not. So this is traditional television. And it is, as I mentioned here, it's usually the least flexible place for addressable advertising, but boy, the reach. So because it's going everywhere at that time, People know where it is. They know how to reach it. But again, you're direct marketers, and this is a very, very powerful tool for brand. You can also use it, but be aware that it's primarily a brand marketing tool. When someone says advanced television, they're talking about digitally transmitted video content. And if you think about that, or if you actually track down and chase the technology underlying all of this, nearly everything is digital in some way now. So again, I've represented all the a range of devices where your video ad may show up on advanced television. And I mentioned before, I don't want us to think about linear television versus other types of addressable video. We're talking about addressable video, addressable television. Video on demand, we talked a little bit about this in terms of how cable companies use this to compete with video rental companies. And we're seeing today an extreme proliferation of video on demand offerings, which, as I mentioned in the slide here, eclipse anything that the cable companies still have operating. You got your Disney Plus and Hulu and Netflix. It's all there, and lots of people are realizing that there's great money and great differentiation in offering unique content which they make available on demand. So a connected television, this is any television that has internet access, and again, this is becoming so common that it's almost an assumption that somewhere my TV is going to get online and access the internet. And a couple of ways that happens. One is what we refer to as over-the-top, OTT. So when someone says OTT, they're talking about a hardware device that decodes and delivers internet video. And there's some pictures down there. I've got a Roku, an Apple TV. I've got a Fire TV there. And the reason they're called OTT, that's over the top, because traditionally your cable box or your cable set-top box sat on top of the television, and your over-the-top box would sit right on top of that. So again, the TV's now getting nice and skinny. So if you hear someone say we should phase out OTT, that's still what they're talking about, but they don't sit on the top. So video streaming device, video streaming service, that's probably how you'll hear all of this referred to in the future very shortly. And then this concept of a smart TV that says, you know what if instead of having a set-top box, what if we just took the hardware out of that box and stuck it in the television? And it's getting very hard to buy a television that's not smart these days. Pretty much everything in my house that plugs in the wall can show Netflix. They all come with a client, and it's very, very common. Might be harder to upgrade. Some smart TVs you can click and it'll upgrade the clients, and some don't do as well. So trade-off there in terms of number of boxes dangling off of your wall or your countertop versus flexibility and upgradability. So all of this comes together. Again, I've got my television with some content that I want to see. I've got over-the-air broadcast. That's still a thing. People with antennas can pick that up, and that's not addressable. So that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a cable MSO that allows linear and other opportunities through their set-top box or other way of broadcasting that content. And then I haven't really talked about satellite, but satellite is very much like an MSO. It has a broadcast point. It has a whole lot of receivers. And years ago, that was kind of a problem because the satellite could only send one signal and everybody had to pick it up. But inside of that signal was a number that said, hey, your receiver is activated. And so the content signal would actually provide who got unlocked and who didn't. But now, as we see the cable boxes are hooking to the internet, there's easier ways for them to deliver different advertisements. So maybe the ads come through your internet connection and pool up on your satellite box, and then it just knows to show them when it's time. So they're becoming much smarter, much more savvy, and essentially a comparable offering to addressable television through cable. But the one that we really wanted to talk about here is connected TV, over the top, smart streaming. There's a huge, huge number of services, lots and lots of content, and lots of ad-supported content. So what can we do with that? Depends. So within those services, there will be different levels of addressability. And some of that, they don't know who it is. It's It's just like broadcast. And again, we don't consider that addressable because I can't come and say, I'd like to speak to Will. We don't know him. He's mixed in with the rest of the audience. There may be services that can guess, hey, you know what? I think this is Will because the IP address that's consuming my video content was associated with him previously. So we can guess and generally be pretty accurate, but maybe it's not 100% accurate. Self-identified traffic, very, very accurate because people need to create a login. So you have to have an email address. Depends, there might be cases where I made up a fake email address and a fake name and I was still able to get it because it's ad-supported content. So I can have self-identified traffic, which is pretty easy to match to a list of consumers that I'd like to speak to. And then finally, we have financially verified consumers. These are people that are paying to consume that content. And in that case, the MSO, if it's subscribers or the company that's licensing that content, they know exactly who you are. And that's very, very easy to access. Now, a lot of times they're doing that because it's premium content, you paid for it, and you don't want commercials. So a lot of that content isn't addressable because there's no advertising opportunities. So how do we make it go? And I talked a little bit here about the huge number of different video streaming and advertising services in that lower right. And so just like other digital platforms that you may have used, it depends. But underneath all of this, you start by identifying who it is that you want to talk to. You are direct marketers. You have data, you have skills that allow you to identify a target audience and message them with the correct message at the right time. So find the attributes, find the people who are already your best consumers, your best customers, subscribers, donors, whatever it is you're trying to do with it. And then in the second bullet there, it's important that some platforms don't let you bring your own audience. They want to do the targeting using data they have. So in that sense, it may not even be that much more addressable than if you went to linear TV and said, I'd like to buy shows that are targeting women in this age demographic. So find out if the platform that you're interested in allows you to bring your own audience, because that's really where you'll have the power. And that also allows you to do very advanced matchback and attribution when you're done. Third bullet here, if you are going to do linear television addressable buys, you probably don't want to send your subscriber list to a telecom, to an MSO, and they definitely aren't going to send their subscriber list to you. And so you may find an external entity who acts as the Switzerland to take your data, to take their subscriber list, match them up without ever revealing either one to the other party. And I'll stop here. This is kind of I think we're actually past the midpoint. Here's a dad joke. What's the best thing about living in Switzerland? I don't know, but the flag is a big plus. I can't hear you laughing, but I'm sure you are. Fourth bullet, you need to know whether your intended platform is typically consumed on large format devices or whether it is trending towards smaller devices. So when you buy YouTube, great media, great content, but let's face it, most YouTube content is consumed on computer screens and increasingly on mobile handsets. So as you build your audience, and especially as you build your creative, that's going to be really important. All right. So the actual nuts and bolts of making all this go, again, varies very greatly by platform. And it will seem a lot like display in many cases, but it'll be like television. You got to upload your video creative. You got to make sure it's the right format and length and content guidelines. So, but underneath all of that, you're going to provide the video creative or arrange for somebody to produce that for you. You're going to supply or select your addressable audience, and you might need to use partners to make that happen. You're going to designate any additional targeting to put on that. So here's the people I'd like to talk to. I'd only like to talk to them during these times of the day, maybe on this type of content. Be careful applying too many selects on top of that because the more you restrict that, the less you're going to get. So the timelines here are generally a little bit looser than with broadcast, but it's going to be a little bit tighter than most digital. You know, I can upload a banner and have it serving in a few minutes. Whereas with video, they're probably going to be someone who's checking the content and vetting it. As I mentioned before, the more specific you're targeting, the smaller your addressable audience, the less reach. That makes a lot of sense. The less spend you're going to get. But emerging platforms, especially those video on demand streaming services, they allow you to target very tightly. So you can make micro buys against very small audiences. If it's economical for you to do it operationally, it's becoming increasingly easy to start small and figure out what works. So we talked about programmatic. That is to say, I'd like to buy all these people. And in television, that's not how it works. In television, you buy a show up front. You go and say, I'm going to buy these ads, and it may be a year ahead of when they actually broadcast. Versus RTB, real-time bidding. You know, if you happen to see someone in the next 48 hours who matches these criteria or is on my list, will you please show them this ad? And we're seeing those converge in the middle as well. So where we used to have the television upfronts, we now see digital upfronts, new fronts, different fronts, where content providers are making pre-sales happen. And those are usually guaranteed. But again, there's so many platforms, including most of the demand side platforms in traditional digital, that will allow you to buy video in RTB. So I say it's the best way right there. It says it. I can start very small, find that audience that I want, and figure out really how to work it. So I already answered this question. Do I go big or do I start small? If you're going big, you already know more than I do. You did not need to sit here. You're already buying large amounts of linear broadcast television. You are an expert in television and video advertising. So if that's you, that's awesome. We'd love to hear about how you've moved from linear buys into addressable television. But for the rest of us, especially for direct marketers, we can start small. We can make programmatic buys, especially in shorter form across lots of exchange-enabled video. It works a lot like your traditional digital. And you can bring that in. Lots of times the measurement, because it's on the same DSP or platform, it'll tie that right together with your display ads. It can be very simple and inexpensive. There's lots and lots of ways to get here. We talked a little bit about creative. And so when you're building your creative, it's important to remember whether or not your audience is likely to be consuming this on small format devices, which we call lean forward. So someone is lean forward, they're right on those controls, and they're going to have a much lower tolerance to boredom. And if you fail to entertain them, you're done. Versus a large format device where you lean back, it's going to have a lot more tolerance, and you may be able to get away with a longer ad. That said, 30-second spots that we use traditionally in television, they're just not going to work, especially with lean forward with small format content. So when you go to produce your creative, plan right up front to do multiple versions of varying lengths, and we see ads even down to 5 seconds now, the 5-second video spot. So plan ahead. How likely is my audience to consume this entire ad and pick up my message? So we talked about audience is the core of all this. You start by identifying the people that you want to message. And that said, it's important to remember that the same audience member, the same consumer, is going to behave differently at 12:30 p.m. sitting at a desk than they do at 9:30 p.m. laying in bed watching entertainment. So either plan ahead in terms of the ad that you're going to show, or you can filter those. But be careful. You do want to talk to those people. And so figure out what context they're going to be in and how they're going to respond as you produce your creative and plan your campaigns. So reporting, again, we are not brand marketers. And I get in trouble when I say things like, brand marketers have really loosey-goosey metrics. But they do. They totally do. Versus we are direct marketers, and we have to see that every penny that goes out the door comes back to us. And so when you go to a walled garden platform, they may only tell you, hey, here's your report, believe it or don't, but that's all you're going to get. Versus some platforms that may tell you, hey, we tried to play to these households, we they may be able to detect this device or household saw the ad, no question about it. And even beyond that, we're pretty sure there was a human being on the other side of that ad. So there's different levels of data that can be tied into that reporting and different levels of willingness to share it with you. So this was our question here. Hey, is this right for me? Be aware, video creative is expensive. If you haven't produced any, it's not cheap. So this is not where you're going to get an intern to come in and bang something out in Photoshop. 4 figures is typical even for less polished video. 5 figures for good-looking ads, and the guys who go national with this stuff, they're spending money on the creative. Now that said, I've got 2 recent college graduates who are staying at my house for the summer, and it is amazing not just the technology, but the level of skill that some of the entry-level folks are coming out. So maybe you'll go home and you got an intern who says, you know what, I can bang out a professional-looking video creative for nothing, and I'm sure that's coming. But be aware that it's typically more expensive. So we talked a little bit about the length and content, and that will vary by channel. So your response rates and the feedback that you get will vary quite broadly. And then if you have a highly siloed organization, maybe you're struggling just to figure out, I do direct mail or I do digital and videos down the hall. Can we even work with them? Or are they going to try to take our budget? Hopefully not. Most of that silliness is gone. But as you come together and work together to promote these types of campaigns, you may find that you struggle to get that attribution correct, because everybody wants to get maximum credit for their campaigns. So this was our question. We started at, should I try addressable video ads right now? And of course, the answer is, I don't know. I can't tell you. I can tell you that your results will tend to be a little bit less immediate and a little bit less concrete than you get through lots of direct marketing programs. Be aware of that. However, because we're targeting video, it's being consumed very, very broadly. You may be able to reach people in ways that you just can't. As some of you are aware, there's a little pandemic going on right now, and it has wreaked havoc with marketing budgets, with advertisers. So you may find that there's inventory available in video spaces, and it may be available for cheap. So you may find that your response rates are lower there. So the bottom line is, if you've been toying with testing, this might be a good time because everything's up in the air. And when it all comes back down, if you have a sense of whether or not addressable video works for you, that's powerful. And you'll be able, when everybody starts getting back on their feet and starts planning for the prosperous coming year, you'll be better positioned for that. So it's a great time to learn, a great time to experiment and figure out how that works. And once so start by figuring out who you want to talk to. This is a smattering of platforms that are really easy to get audiences to. And so if you come up with an audience and say, you know what, I'd like to send it to one of these platforms to incorporate into video advertising content, there are lots more. And there will be varying degrees of how hard it is to get your audience on there, all the way from again, working with a third party to negotiate all of that, all the way down to just upload it or send it through this platform. But figure out who you want to talk to and figure out where you're going to make that happen. Maybe you already work with one of these platforms. At the end of the day, it's exciting new technology. There's lots going on here, and it's a great time to be learning and growing as marketers. So I hope a few of you are still awake, and if there are any questions, I'm going to stop sharing now, and we'll see what we've got to talk about.
Well, thanks so much. That was awesome.
Thank
So we
you.
do have a few questions,
Yeah.
a couple really good ones here. So I'm going to kick off Q&A. Again, just a reminder, if you haven't asked a question yet and you have one, please go ahead and write it in the chat box. I'm in the Q&A box. How is available inventory of addressable TV placements won or lost by competing advertisers who want to reach the same person or people at the same time?
That's a great question. And a lot of that will depend on how the auction is set up. At the end of the day, a lot of this is going to ad exchanges. Not just that, a lot of this is going to the exact same ad exchanges that your display ads are going to. So again, at the premium price point, if you want to buy this show on this cable channel, you can go make that happen with the right size of check. But for bidded inventory, it's going, is it a second place auction? Is it a first place auction? Auction dynamics are changing these days as well. So a lot of that will depend on the ad exchange. Bottom line here is the more you bid, the more you're going to serve to those people. So be careful and make sure that you're measuring and getting your money worth out of those bids.
Right, absolutely. So kind of in a similar vein, one question is, in the industry, you're hearing about addressable all the time because it's part of what's happening in marketing. How prevalent is it actually versus how much we hear about it?
That's a good question. I hope you've been hearing about it for 15 years now, because like I say, that's when I started work on it. And at that time, it was super hot. It was the technology of the future, and it has been the tech of the future for most of that 15 years. It's not that prevalent in linear because you're competing with brand marketers who are out to get their gross ratings points, and you're just not going to be able to pay on a direct response level. And that's why, it's like slide 2 in my presentation, where we branch from addressable linear television into all the huge number of addressable video, and that is exceptionally prevalent. So simple example, go watch YouTube, and every single ad on there was customized for you. And it was based not only on who did that advertiser want to talk to, but on what did you look at, how long did it, so it's very, very prevalent in emerging video platforms.
All right, makes sense. Another question, do most of the platforms enable brands to bring their own first-party audience data?
Yes, I'll say that, and the first one you try will be the one that says no, but yeah, absolutely. And especially if you go to a new star or a live ramp, if it's a platform that's already connected with one of those onboarding systems, not only is the answer yes, but it's yes, and it's super easy.
Great. What kind of reporting do addressable television advertisers receive for the ads they serve?
Yeah, so that's a good one too. And I hinted at it that it varies all the way from, hey, we think we served this ad to 70% of the people you asked us to, the end. That would be at the low end of reporting, all the way to your ad went all the way through by this many people in these parts of the country, to even with the right privacy constraints applied, to even, hey, let's match up your customer list with the people that saw these ads and actually do closed loop attribution. So all the way from just about nothing to most of the same types of reports that we get with digital advertising.
Right. All right, thanks. So another question, seeing a lot of direct response ads on news shows, is that a sign of the times that you described, with lots of time available and the right demographics?
Yes. So one of the things, brand safety is important. Nobody wants their ad to be serving next to Al-Qaeda or whatever other horrible things are out there in the world. And so a few years ago, not me, but we as an industry put together, hey, here's best practices for brand safety. And one of them was, when something horrible happens in the world, don't show your ad next to that news content. And so if you watch the news today, it's all horrible. There's very few puppies and bunnies in that news. And so the demand for that inventory is pretty low right now, which means the prices are low, which means the availability is very, very high. But again, be aware that you're showing your ad to people right next to some real downers that are going on in the world. But it's still going on, and we still want to engage with those folks.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. So do reports show viewable impressions?
Viewable impressions. So yes. I mean, with video, normally the player knows whether it's above the fold or on screen and active very, very easily. So most impressions are going to be viewable. Some platforms will even give you interacting impressions. In other words, there's a difference between a video that's playing on my screen versus a video playing on my screen and my mouse is moving somewhere. And so if the player's aware that my mouse is moving, then it knows not only did your video play, but there was a person within mouse range of that video. So it had a likelihood someone was watching it and not down the hall or getting a snack or whatever.
Right, yeah, definitely. That's the thing with TV, right? There's the high likelihood of getting the snack.
Right. So it all depends, and most platforms will lay that out for you. But yeah, there'll be different metrics all the way down to, you know, people are interacting with it or moving it versus most players stop playing if they're below the fold or not actually visible.
Right. Okay. So one of the questions is, you had said that to consider whether micro-targeting is economical for you. So generally speaking, how economical is it?
Yeah. So there's two things to consider there. One is, you know, I'm going to pay X amount of dollars and I'm hoping to get X plus Y amount of results in dollars. And that is economical. But there's also an operational question there. And with video, your operational overhead is going to be a little bit higher. Your ops team or your agency, whoever's making all this happen, when you say the word micro buys, they all start tearing their hair out, because now instead of doing one big $1 million campaign, they want you ask them to do $1 million $1 micro campaigns, and they will hate you for that. And there will come a point where even if those are performing twice as well as the one big campaign, you're still going to be underwater because you're paying people to make all that happen, to optimize it, to keep an eye on it. So you got to weigh those two factors. But right now, there's a lot of, this may not be true at your organization, but there's a lot of ops teams who are not being tasked with all they're capable of. So if you've got extra overhead, this might be a great time. You don't have to let those people go. Put them to work on that $1 million $1 campaigns. And when it's all over, they'll know right where the sweet spot is.
Absolutely. So Will, thank you so much for all the great information, really meaty and detailed. Really appreciate all your expertise today.
Oh, thank you so much, Ginger. And I can't see all the participants, but again, thank you so much, folks. I know it's the end of the day for you, and I appreciate you sitting here and listening to me yammer on. And please let me know if there's anything I can do to help you with your programs going forward.
Absolutely. And yes, thank you everyone for attending. I look forward to seeing you all next week to hear Bruce Beagle's marketing forecast update. Bruce, who, as you likely already know, is Senior Managing Partner at Winterberry Group. He is going to forecast which sectors will bounce sooner rather than later, and where he sees systemic change in advertising versus just short-term changes based on things like the pandemic and everything else that's happening in the market right now. So I look forward to seeing you there, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks, everyone.